Hello everyone and welcome back to the Maggie Walker Project. Today I'm bringing you an interview with Garret Johnson, who is a managing director at BMO, where he works in wealth management for ultra high net worth individuals. And when I say ultra high net worth, I'm talking people with hundreds of millions of dollars, and he works to manage their assets. Later on in the interview, he tells us some incredibly interesting stories and also some of the perks of working with ultra wealthy individuals. At BMO, Garret Johnson has also worked as a managing director and head of private equity. So he breaks that down later in the interview in layman's terms. So if you're interested in private equity down the road, hearing his explanations alongside his experiences can be so helpful. Before we get into the interview, I also want to announce that we are finally on Spotify. Using Spotify can make listening to these insightful interviews on the go so much easier. So make sure to check us out. And without further ado, here is the interview. Enjoy. Just to start off, could you give us a brief rundown on what your position is and kind of what your daily responsibilities entail?
Sure, happy to do that. So today, I am the person that leads the ultra high net worth banking and lending business at BMO Wealth Management, and I also look after what we call our private equity credit business, which lends money to and helps out individuals that work in the private equity industry, providing them capital, helping them manage their own money, as well as helping them finance purchases of homes, boats, planes, whatever it is that they might need.
Mm-hmm. And what does the day in your life kind of look like?
Oh, it's I don't know. I think it's pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on the day, I could be in the office. Our office is downtown Chicago, or I could be anywhere else in the country. So for instance, last week I was in New York from Tuesday to Friday morning. I had a black tie event I had to go to, as well as spent a number of, met with a bunch of different clients all throughout Manhattan. The week before, I was in California and San Francisco, doing the same, except for I didn't have a black tie event, so I didn't have to bring my tuxedo, which is good. It's easier to pack light.
Mm-hmm. So you have a little bit of variety in terms of what you do on a day-to-day basis because of the type of people you deal with.
Yes, that, and then the type of role that I have, it's both management as well as client facing. So that allows me to do a bunch of different things. So traveling to visit clients, as well as helping lead the team and coach people.
Got it. And then could you tell me a little bit about your early life and your background? What kind of guided you, to the role in wealth management and private equity?
Sure. So I grew up in a very small town in Illinois. Call it, I don't know, 10,000-ish people or so in the kind of the surrounding township, right? So just like the small town, and then folks that living outside of it. Didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up, but I did know that I wanted to be successful. I found my way to Morehouse College, where I majored in accounting, and then from there, that's when I got introduced into banking and finance. I did a couple internships in New York City at a firm and doing investment banking there for 2 summers. And then after graduation, joined BMO in Chicago. My intention was really to be at BMO for a couple years and then go to business school. But I joined during the great financial crisis. And so I decided to stay working, which really, I think, led me to where I'm at today. Because then after about 7 years, 10 months, and about 11 days, I decided to leave one role I was in BMO, one division, and go to the wealth division to try to build something. I wanted to do something entrepreneurial within the big bank. It was a little tough at first, but it ended up working out pretty good. And then after a number of years of being an individual contributor, so think of it like not managing people, but more so responsible for just bringing in business to the firm on your own. We decided to build a team focused around the niche, working with private equity individuals that I had started. And here we are today with a little bit of success.
And you said you did something entrepreneurial. How did you like, I guess I wanted to ask a little bit more about that. Like, what
Sure.
was the entrepreneurial thing that you did within BMO? How did that kind of, intertwine?
Yeah. So in my former team, I had a lot of clients come up to me and ask me if we provided a certain service, right? If we did a certain type of lending, and we didn't at BMO. But it seemed like it was a good idea. A lot of people kept asking. And BMO is today, it's a $1.3 trillion bank, one of the largest in North America, which is, 1.3 trillion is a big number. I can't even fathom what that looks like. But so we're a big company, suffice it to say, with 50, 60,000 employees. So the thought that there was an idea or there was something that we didn't already do was interesting to me. I thought, if I could, as a young person, I was 29 years old at the time, if I could convince some people in our big company that this was a good idea, perhaps we could create a new business, do something entrepreneurial within BMO, start a new team, create a new product that the big company didn't otherwise have. And so that's what I meant on my entrepreneurial journey. And in some ways, it was a bit easy. I think in some ways it's easier uh, than doing something completely independent because you have a lot of resources of the bank and a brand and things like that, a platform, and plus a salary that you're being paid. But then in some ways, it's also a bit more difficult because you're operating within the structure of a really large, highly regulated financial institution. So there's certain things you can't really do. So you're a little bit limited and handcuffed in some ways, and then you're kind of empowered and supported in others. It's an interesting it's an interesting challenge for me.
Hmm. And do you think that you want to do maybe something entrepreneurial more down the line, or like, what do you kind of feel? How do you feel like that experience was?
Perhaps I would say that this experience for me was it was a test of my what I'll call persistence, belief in myself, an idea, being able to create something was a challenge, and it's been really empowering. I think at some point, who knows, I very well could do something more entrepreneurial in addition to what I'm doing at the bank, or perhaps there'll be an opportunity for me to do something outside of my current employer that will just really make sense for me. But either way, whether or not I use that to do something outside, it has drastically changed my career at BMO to allow me to have a lot more latitude, a lot more political influence, a lot more access to these resources of the bigger business to what I'll say, to get things done at the bank. It's been really powerful.
Okay. And how did you kind of get started in your career? And what different roles did you have over the years? How did the progression kind of work?
Sure. So upon graduation from Morehouse in 2007, I joined what was called our Universal Banking Training Program, where we spent it was a 6-month rotation program through various businesses and teams within BMO. This is a part of our corporate and investment bank. Um, Upon finishing the training program in December of 2007, I was placed in a team that lent to private equity firms. That was really my first exposure as I happened to get placed. And I rotated through that team. It seemed very interesting, but maybe not happened. Maybe the more appropriate way to say it is fortunate. I had lobbied, uh, tried to build relationships with the folks on that team because it was a place I wanted to be. So I did that, started as an analyst, and then was promoted to an associate. Upon 2.5, 3 years of being at BMO, made that associate role. And that's when the point what I would have normally, my plan when I first started right out of school was after 2, 3 years, I would then go to business school. At that point, the economy was pretty tough. post the great financial crisis. And there are a lot of folks who I went to school with at Morehouse who were in B school who had gotten laid off. I had not gotten laid off. I wasn't a part of any reduction of force when the economy went down. And I was liking what I was doing. So I stuck with it. And from there, continued to get promoted, made assistant vice president next after about 5 or 6 years at the bank. And then around 7.5 years or so, I made vice president. And vice president is when you become a bit more of an officer for the bank, and you've got a little bit more say, have a little bit more influence. And then from there, went to the wealth business. So again, that was about 7 years, 10 months and 11 days or so. And then from the wealth business, I was an advisor for about six years and some change. And that's an advisor and a director. So another grade, another promotion ahead of the vice president. So I was in that role really for the longest of all the roles I'd been in, 6 years, because I'd historically been kind of promoted up every couple of years. But once you hit vice president in a bank, oftentimes the curve for some of us can kind of level off a bit and becomes more gradual as there's fewer and fewer spots. But at any rate, as I was saying, had some really good success creating a new team in business while I was that director person. And that was when I had all that entrepreneurial experience and took that entrepreneurial risk at the bank. And, a few years ago, a little over 3, so February of 2021, we created a team and I became a managing director of a new team that was focused on the business that I had established and built at BMO. And from there have just continued to grow and build. And so then it was only about 3 months ago that I took on additional responsibilities for all of our ultra high net worth banking and lending business for the US, which between the two businesses represents close to 50% of BMO's wealth management lending revenues. So a bigger platform for me to try to grow.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of like that product that you were creating, like, as more like an entrepreneurial endeavor within BMO, like that was really like a huge hit, I guess. You're kind of like pioneering that, right?
Yeah. that was the big hit. That was the differentiator. That was something that allowed me to stand out amongst my peers as well as people more senior to me. That was it really helped launch me, project me forward in my career.
And at what position were you able to do that in?
So I had the idea, and again, it's less about me being creative, to be honest, and it was more about me just listening. As I had indicated, there were clients coming to us and asking me, and it wasn't just me. I suppose, and I believe they've talked to our other colleagues, but people didn't want to put forth the effort, right? They weren't necessarily listening to the client to try to say, oh, okay, let me figure out a way to solve your need. But I just listened. They said, we need something. We need, we need a loan that would allow us to finance a certain asset. So people get loans to buy cars, houses, businesses, all sorts of things, yachts, art. Why not buy another asset? Like, why not? If something doesn't exist, there's a lot of effort to create something, and folks just didn't want to do that. Other people that heard that, and I think, and part of that is maybe sometimes people just don't know how. Sometimes there's a fear of failure that happens, and sometimes there's a fear of, if I put forth all this effort, is it going to be worth it? It's all those unknowns. And you could think about the same thing if you were starting a business independently, and any others. What happens if you fail? Are you going to lose everything? Are you going to be embarrassed? if you are successful, is it going to be worth it? Would you have been better off just doing something else and working for somebody? Those are all the questions that people, wrestle with. But I thought, why not give it a shot? I was fairly young at the time when I had the idea. And again, the idea came to me from our clients, and I then presented it to one of the leaders that I think we should do this for them. They said, okay, figure it out. And so I was a vice president, and then it took about 2 years. It was close to 18 months, but I call it 2 years to really get the product built, get all the credit policy in place, and convince people in the big company, and including our leadership up in Canada, that this was something we should do. So it took a lot of effort to do that. And then it was only after that that we were able to really prove it out.
I think, okay, so this is like just really interesting to me. So the ways that you were able to really differentiate yourself was because you were able to listen, and just because you're able to put in that effort, and you didn't have those limiting beliefs that like a lot of other people have.
Dude, I'd say the not having those limiting beliefs, to use your words, is a game changer. You think about so many people that have done stuff that are meaningful or impactful or who are successful. They believe they can, right? And just because something hasn't been done before doesn't mean it can't be done. So that's a big thing. And again, for me, I had that belief at that point in time, but I wasn't not necessarily a creative person. But to your point, I was able just to look around and listen and just pay attention. Sometimes it's easy to be focused on other stuff. There's a lot of things that can distract people these days. But to really focus on it, to say, how do you have an impact? And for me, not being a creative person, it was listening to, okay, what is it that people need? People keep asking me this for this thing that we don't have. It'd be the same way as if you were to say, there's you discover a need in your friend group or your community or your school, where, hey, people always need this one thing. What if I were to provide and fill that need and make a business out of that?
Well, and I feel like that's something that's like really underemphasized when people think about business and like entrepreneurship. They always think you have to, have some crazy creative idea that's out there and never been done before. But I really like the idea that you had about it, like just seeing what people need and offering that. It's really not much more complex than that.
Yeah, like you don't have to create the iPhone. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to do that. And or Elon Musk, he didn't invent Tesla. That was something else, right? He bought the company and then turned it into something greater. But even thinking much more simple, fried chicken sandwiches, right? People wanted that. It's not like a crazy concept, right? It exists. It already exists, but just providing for it in a better way. Or there's a need that people want, and it's not being filled. Let me find a way to fill that.
Okay. You touched a little bit about funding and lending and your entrepreneurial things, but can you explain about a little bit about your current position with wealth management and how you, or I guess what facilitated your shift from lending to wealth management?
Sure. So it's really just a function of growing. I'd made this comment before about having a larger platform. So for me, what I'm focused on and what I'm really trying to get from the bank, so whether I stay there forever and I run the bank one day or run a division of it one day, or I do something outside, the thing I can get the most, I feel, from my current role in working at BMO, is developing relationships with clients who are very influential, very powerful people. So billionaires and centimillionaires, things like that, $100 million net worth people who that run businesses and control a lot of things. Like I want to continue to foster and develop more relationships with those type of people, because that can create other opportunities for whether myself or the bank down the road. So that's important, continue to build relationships. And I continue to meet new folks, leveraging my platform and my position in at BMO. So I'm continuing to get value there. I don't know how I'm going to monetize that value, right? Create money from those relationships, but I'm less concerned about that now. And I'm more so concerned about creating the network effect. Similar to, I'll liken it to like technology companies or social media companies or Facebook. When they first started, they didn't have a way to make money. They were just trying to build relationships and build connectivity. And then as time went on, they became an advertiser. It's like, well, we've got all this reach and all this influence and all this stuff on people. We could send targeting ads to them. And then they found other ways to monetize what they built from that network and that platform. In a very rudimentary and teeny tiny simple way, I think about that as similar. Is I want to continue to build my network of very influential people that I can eventually one day find a chance to monetize. But first, let me just keep building the network and building those relationships. So that's one part. And then the other part is having the bigger platform. The business that I had on just the lending side, it's a great business. It's the best business at BMO Wealth Management. It's the most profitable, fastest growing, all that stuff. But it's still small compared to big BMO. And so I needed to have more influence, a larger platform, have bigger teams, more people that I'm leading to demonstrate I can continue to have larger and bigger responsibilities. And so to answer your question very directly, this context here thing is what I was getting at. The lending business, what I was doing, was very successful, but it's only one part. I needed to have a bigger business. And so the thought of going into more in the wealth management side, taking leadership of our ultra high net worth banking and lending business, that was an important part to allow me to have more influence at the company and a bigger platform to have a bigger impact. Because if I can be successful in larger roles with bigger businesses, that's going to be good for me from a career standpoint. And that's also going to open up a greater audience of people for me to build relationships and connectivity with that I can hopefully one day monetize.
Okay. And in addition to like the connections just being super cool, how have you seen just the benefits of having connections with these, ultra high net worth people played out in your life?
It's been pretty interesting. So I would say a couple of different ways. It's pretty neat. My let's see here. There are certain well-known people that are public figures in the media, celebrities, what have you, that I get a chance to work with, and that's interesting. Understanding what these people are really like, those that you read about or see on TV. It's also been helpful because some of these people are artists, and so being able to go backstage, hang out a little bit, bring my wife along. She thinks it's neat, so I impress her a little bit. So that's always that's always a little fun. And then I think, but even more important than some of those cool things, I'll call it, I'm still a younger person. I'm 39 years old. And the ability for me to get things done, get in front of people, bring business to the firm, to BMO, that otherwise would not be brought to people that are 10, 20 years older than me, because they don't have that same level of relationship and access that I do. That's what's been the most fulfilling for me, is having the access to make things happen and bring in business that otherwise folks could not do. So that's been really exciting, continues to be rewarding for me personally.
Okay. And you might not be able to disclose this, but what's been one of the craziest anecdotes that you have from just dealing with some of these people?
Um, so trying to think which one to say. There's some interesting stuff that's that's happened that I've seen that we've kind of come across. But what I'll say is, and I'll try to, and I want to keep it keep it appropriate here. But I think one of the things that was pretty interesting was there's this client of mine who uh, has a plane, right? A private jet, not uncommon. But he's friends with uh, rock stars and musicians and famous people like that, and they had invited me to uh, go on just a trip with them to talk to this person. The whole point was just come on, fly down, and it'll be a way for you to hang out with this person on the jet because they're so busy, kind of running around. It was instead of going somewhere to meet somebody over a dinner or lunch or going to their office, it was the only time you could meet this person was in the jet because they're going from this place to another to go perform and to do this. And so it was like using their private jet as really like their conference room or like their meeting room. And like, that's just how life is. It's like, if you want to get them, this is like the 2 hour window where they're between, this city and that city. And this is your opportunity to kind of hang out and chat with them and like have a business conversation. And so for me, I thought that was just like one of those things about perspective, right? Most folks you'd have a meeting in a conference room in an office, but that's for most folks. But if you live a different type of life in a completely different reality, you know, that's your office. Is this airplane? It's just 30,000 feet in the air. So
Yeah.
that was something that I thought that was pretty interesting, and it just kind of opened up my mind and my perspective a little bit to think about things a little differently.
Wow, that seems like a really incredible opportunity. What have you found most challenging about also dealing with these incredibly wealthy people? Is it like high stakes? What do you kind of think about that?
Um, I'll say this.
Make sure to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you ever want to contact me about anything regarding the channel, you can contact me at themaggieWalkerProject@gmail.com. It'll also be linked in the description. So with that, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.